guys, and welcome to the newest episode of Be Hero Presents the Bump Card Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, as always, Brian, and with me tonight is my tag partner, Psycho. How are you doing tonight, Psycho?
I'm doing good. Doing good.
Right on, right on. It's a good, exciting night tonight. As we go on, we're going to be talking about the career and matches of Bryan Danielson or Daniel Bryan, whichever one you want to go with. Fantastic wrestler. Honestly, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. So we'll talk a little bit about him and talk about some of the best matches he's ever had, in our opinion, and everything else. But before we do that, as we always do, we're going to go ahead and talk about the wrestling world news. So, Psycho, hit us up.
Okay. So this first news item, I almost hesitate to go over it just because I try not to discuss politics, especially on our podcast. Mm-hmm. But The Undertaker on his podcast, have you heard who he's going to have on?
Trump?
Yep, Donald Trump is going to be on The Undertaker's podcast. That's interesting.
That it is.
Yeah.
See how that's gonna go.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on after that. Let's see here. So, you remember like way back when The Simpsons had Bret Hart voice himself basically on The Simpsons? Did you ever see that?
Oh yeah. When I think it was Mr. Bret Hart was buying like Mr. Burns' old house.
Yep. Yeah. Pretty famous incident or episode there. But Bret Hart commented that he was not originally scheduled to play himself. He was scheduled to voice a different character. So apparently there was a wrestler that they wanted, so basically a wrestler, but it wasn't set to be Bret Hart because, I don't know, they wanted it to be a generic wrestler or something like that. So Bret Hart actually did the voiceover because they said it's just a part for a wrestler, and he did the voiceover. The wrestler's name was called Mad Viking or something like that.
Okay.
And so Bret Hart did the voice for Mad Viking. Everything was the same, but he wasn't Bret Hart. So when you hear the voiceover and it doesn't really sound like Bret, it's because he was trying to be somebody else. And what happened was after the whole thing was done, Bret Hart was signing autographs in the Fox Studios parking lot, and there was maybe like 300 people in line signing getting autographs from Bret. And a producer came up to Bret and said, "I had no idea you were that famous. We're going to draw you in as you." So that's how that came about.
So what I'm hearing is Bret saying that he did the take one, like essentially one time or one visit
or whatever.
And they realized later on that he was more famous than he is, or they thought he was, so they just had to put him in. I have to go back and watch this episode, but I'm 95% sure he mentions himself as the Hitman in that. So I kind of call BS.
Yeah, I mean, this is Bret Hart retelling this story about that. So I'm going to have to go back and listen to it now too and see. I mean, I'm pretty sure that episode is on Disney Plus. So
it is. I'm not like my wife goes to sleep to watching The Simpsons, and I feel like I've seen this episode fairly recently. Mm-hmm. But I'm gonna need to go hunt it back down and find it. But I'm pretty sure that, or it's like a whole Mandela effect, because I'm like 95% positive. I remember
now, everybody that's listening, go back and watch it and let us know: is you buy that story or not? I mean, I don't know, Bret. For all the things that Bret Hart is, and yes, I'm a Bret Hart guy, but I try not to be biased here. Okay, Brett usually tells the truth, or at least the truth as he sees it. So
That second one's the one I'm thinking is what happened.
So he usually doesn't. He's not like Hogan, though, where he just blatantly, embellishes a story, or where it's a bold-faced lie.
Yeah,
So,
like somehow deciding, I'm going to get immunity and then just not, do the thing I said I was going to do for immunity and not, totally purge myself on the stage or on the court, but, not get arrested or anything.
yeah, exactly. Things like that. So, yeah. So the next thing, um, so there's a news item. I mean, this isn't so much news, but the Godfather, who was Papa Shango and all that, right? He mentioned that he, when he got rid of the Godfather and they made him the Good Father in the Right to Censor, says nobody hated that more than him. He was just like going through the motions, like waiting for it to end.
Well, I mean, I understand totally, because outside of it just being such a lame character, especially for him, like wrestlers, especially when they're getting over, like they get a percentage of the merchandise sales, right? That's how they make a lot of their extra money. And you got to think that Godfather was making a pretty decent sale on merch off of the Godfather gimmick and got nothing off of the Right to Censor stuff.
Yeah, it's and I'm sure like there's not a lot of range that he had the Godfather, right? You go from that to basically they strip him of all the things that was entertaining about him, to wear a suit and a tie, or a white shirt and a tie, and like what do you do with that?
Yeah, so, I mean, you're very limited on the character stuff. Like the only only two people that had any real strength in the characters was Stevie Richards and Ivory. Out of those, because it was Val Venus, Goodfather, and Ivory and Stevie Richards, right? That was all Right to Censor. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I want to say Bull Buchanan was in there too. Was he?
He might have been. Like, Bull Buchanan is very much like that kind of wrestler that I always forget how long he was in the company. Because like it just never felt like he was really anything. Like you have to remember, like not only did he do that, but he also came out with John Cena when John Cena started rapping for a while is B Squared.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there was a long period of time where Bill Buchanan was in the WWE that I do not remember a lot from him.
Yeah. I don't know. I picture like I have like some sort of a memory of him in a white shirt and tie. I could be wrong, but I swear that he was in there too. But
I feel like you're right. Like it does feel right in there. But yeah, that was a gimmick that was really interesting, and I almost feel like that could have been done again about 4 years ago. Could have really done a Right to Censor style thing to kind of do almost like the cancel culture aspect that we just missed out. So
yeah, I could see that. I mean, I get what they were going for with it, and it did get heat. I mean, even that annoying music that they'd come out to, you remember it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! Like I get it.
That whole thing did money for Ivory, though. I think that was when Ivory was at her top. She was the one that got the most out of that. But I think Stevie Richards did pretty well too.
Yeah, and remember when Ivory just recently she was in one of the women's Royal Rumbles and she was cutting a promo as they eliminated her.
Mm-hmm.
As the Right to Censor version of Ivory, and it's like she got the most mileage out of that, I believe, because that's probably what they mostly remember from her.
Yep.
Cool. Well, that's really all the. I think that's all the news that I have right now.
Okay. Well, I'm going to drop some real fast for you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we had a chance to talk about this due to a lot of breaks and things we've had to take over the last few months, but the Motorcycle Machine Guns have signed with the WWE.
Yes.
And they are debuting tomorrow as this airs. Today as this drops, but tomorrow as we're recording.
Right.
SmackDown, they will be officially debuting. They've been kind of teasing it. I am stupid excited for that because I feel like we have the starts of a decent tag team division once again, but I feel like the Motors and Machine Guns, if done right, could be that pinnacle of the tag division. Like they could be the ones that really drive a tag division.
Yeah, it's just crazy that just now they're getting their shot,
Right.
In WWE or anything. And if you would have asked me, like, are they going to sign with WWE or are they going to sign with AEW? Like, I would have thought that they'd be a better fit for AEW's tag division. But under Triple H, if pushed right and done the right way, it could be a crazy good addition to the roster.
I agree. I totally agree. I'm also super excited to see Machine Guns versus DIY. I think that'll be a great match. Like, there's a ton of great stuff I can see this coming out, but just seeing these guys. And then tagging a little bit into that because it's TNA relevant. You heard about some of the. I can't say talks or pre-signings, but kind of seems like that's what's going to happen between TNA people whose contracts are coming up next year and going to WWE, such as Jordan Grace,
yes,
and her husband, Jonathan Gresham.
Mm-hmm.
They look like both of their contracts end in January, and all signs are pointing that both of them are going to be signing with the WWE. Joe Hendry looks like he'll probably sign when his contract ends. His ends at the later end of next year. So there looks to be another one was Jason Alexander or Josh Alexander. Excuse me.
Josh Alexander.
His
Not
ends
the guy
next
from
year.
Seinfeld.
Yeah, I always screw that up. Josh Alexander, who's a great guy, by the way. We had a chance to meet him. We brought him out for our anniversary show last year. Or 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And
I was there for that one.
Yeah, he was a great dude to meet. He got the BS with that. We got the BS with him in the back and everything. But his contract ends next year, and looks like all signs are pointing to him moving over. So it's going to be interesting to see how this continues with the working relationship with TNA, where WWE is doing WWE things and taking them on. When it's okay for WWE to do it, but not WCW.
Right. I wonder though because if some of these guys are getting signed by WWE and they're in this working relationship, right? So they obviously have their blessing, TNA's blessing or whatever. Do you think that WWE will send some of their guys down there to get, I say down there, not derogatory at all to TNA, but over there? Do you think that they could send some guys that maybe aren't getting over on their roster over there to see if maybe TNA can get them over?
Well, they're kind of doing that to a smaller aspect. They do have a lot of NXT guys that do go over there.
But it's more like guest appearances. Same thing like with what TNA did with NXT, right?
Yeah, to an aspect, like they're doing a lot of it where it's guest appearances, but with proper story. Right? It's not this one like, oh my gosh, look who's here. Like there's a story reason for it. That being said, I think this is going to end up being a pretty good thing for TNA as well. And I say this because a lot of people are crapping on it, thinking this is only a bad thing. But if you think of it, Josh Alexander, Jonathan Gresham, Joe Hendry, Jordan Grace, they're kind of like the pinnacle right now. They're the top of TNA. And TNA is not going anywhere. Like even when I'm leaving, they're not going anywhere. what it's going to do is allow a fresh crop of main eventers to be cultivated from this, because you're now taking that top. You see it with NXT when they have people go to the main roster. It's the same concept. So this could definitely be beneficial for them to be able to have these people come in to do that. And then you have these old hands like Bully Ray and Nick Nemeth and so on to help guide them up as they're coming onto the main roster, up to the main event scene, to be able to handle that. So I know a lot of people are crapping on it, but I think this could also be a good thing for TNA.
I mean, honestly, it's probably a good thing for them to attract talent too, because maybe they're not quite ready to, or they don't fit into WWE right now. But if they go to TNA and they get over there, it's a pathway.
Yeah, I mean, a great example is Joe Hendry, right? There's multiple times that they've shown Joe Hendry on WB as working as extra stuff, doing things here or there. He tried out for NXT UK and didn't make it because he wasn't already there. They didn't find him. Like, he didn't fit the system at the time. But he, cut his teeth in TNA for the last several years. And now he's literally the hottest product TNA has, and working now with the WB. When he goes full-time to NXT and does everything, hands down, he's winning that NXT title. So
yeah. I mean, I've seen him. I mean, people are making like reels of him, in different situations with that song and everything, and it's actually pretty funny. So
yeah. All right. Well, that's all I had left in URL news.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and now move on to our main topic of the night, which is going to be Bryan Danielson. I'm going to stick with Bryan Danielson because that was what he's been known of as most of his career. But please know that we're also talking about Daniel Bryan when he was in WWE as well. So before we jump into his matches, I want to give you guys a little rundown of Bryan Danielson's story, right? Bryan Danielson was one of the few people to ever be trained by Shawn Michaels. When Shawn Michaels had his school for a short time, there's only, I think, 7 or 8 actual workers who officially were trained by Shawn. Of course, Marcus was one of them.
Yep, who trained me.
Yep,
and so
then
yes, which then I trained you. So if you think about it, we're all kind of tied together here. So
right.
Yeah, it's some other notable ones that Shawn Michaels trained was Brian Kendrick, Spanky.
Yep.
Lance Cade.
R.I.P.
I'm trying to think. Trying to think if there's anybody like really.
Those were the biggest names that I could think of that came through there. There were several others. I think there were 7 or 8 ones who fully trained with Shawn through his whole system. But it was a great lot of lineage. But Bryan Danielson didn't stop there. Of course, he wrestled for ROH for years, and then Dragon's Gate USA when that came in. He went to Japan and Mexico. He's been all over the place. He's wrestled pretty much everywhere you can, right? He did a very, very short stint in TNA. Then, of course, he went over to WWE and then AEW, where he has now had his last match as a full-time wrestler. I'm not going to say his last match because
I don't believe that for a second.
No. But as a full-time worker, I think it'll be his last match. To be honest, though, I'm a little surprised it being his last match against Jon Moxley. I was really expecting him to have his last match against Nigel McGuinness because of the way that McGuinness was building that.
Yeah, but at least he got the match in. They did wrestle each other again.
They did, I know, but I just didn't feel like it was big enough.
Yeah, no, probably not, but I don't know. Like, they're going somewhere with the Moxley thing. And so they probably felt that was the bigger money match, It was I don't know. And there's a story here because I can't imagine that they're just going to have Bryan Danielson laid out like that and then and then like that's it, right? It's like it almost seems like, number one, it was probably Danielson's idea. It was probably Bryan's
Mm-hmm.
idea to be like, hey, I want to go out on my back and I want to, I mean, it's almost the Brock Lesnar and Undertaker thing. It's like, okay, yes, it could have went to somebody else and it could have got them over. But if they've really got a story, like let's say, you know, Shane McMahon or anything like that, if that's going somewhere, then you want to put as much heat on that as possible, which makes sense for Moxley to take somebody out, because then they can translate that heat to Moxley and get somebody else over by proxy. Almost like a transitional heat taker. I don't know what the proper term would be there, but
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I've always been in the camp that you, when you go out on your back for the last time, that you do it to make somebody, right? And there are ways to do it where you pass that investment, as it were, on to somebody else, right? To make the next person, but you have to do it to pass it on. So Bryan Danielson, you know, got totally wrecked and everything else. If somebody came out to save him at the end, and then that person ended up working and having a storyline with Moxley, I think I would have been happier with it, because then that makes it like they were trying to build somebody up that way, like Darby or somebody. Not that Darby needs making, but that's my example, right? To have it in that passion, that could have made it feel more worth Bryan going out that way. But
I think though that we haven't seen the end of this story, right? So it's too early to make a judgment on it.
I mean, I guess that's true, and I guess we're gonna have to see how it goes. I worry though, because who's in charge of all of the booking? That it's not going to go in that fashion.
We didn't cover this in news, but this kind of does bring it up. Jimmy Jacobs, who was helping with creative in AEW, has left the company. So, and I heard some rumors that Tony Khan's planning to shake up the creative a little bit. So one can hope.
We'll see.
I don't know.
We talked multiple times about that needing to be a thing. Like, he has to hand the book off to somebody, and they need to do something, because I feel like their well is running dry on doing just the big moves, right? They need to have stories. And then when they have stories, like when they have good stories on something, that's when it's hottest. But it's such a few and far between to have good stories. It just drives me nuts. And especially when you compare it against the WWE and from NXT up, right? Almost everybody on TV at this point has a story. And I mean, you can't say that with AEW. A lot of times it's just Tony wanting to play with his toys. Did you see that? Like, drives me nuts. So that being said, it's time to talk about Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson, and some of his best matches. Now, of course, this is subjective to what we think on the matches. When you asked about doing this for this episode, I had to quickly go back and watch a couple of matches, because I had a few in my head, but I wanted to see if there was other ones that I forgot, and there were several that I remember were actually really good or surprisingly good to who he was working with. So let's go ahead and talk about a few.
Did you see any of his Ring of Honor stuff?
Yeah, of course. That's where I went to first. The one I went to was like him, Joe, and Daniels, right? Or is it him? No, him, Joe, and him, Joe, and Daniels was one I watched, but that wasn't the one I was thinking. It was him, Joe, and Loki. At uh, Dishonor, I think it was, that they had. It was one of the first Dishonors they did, and how great of a triple threat that was. Like, there was something magical about ROH in triple threat matches, especially with Danielson in it. They were just insanely good. There's several great ones in there. I don't want to go through them all yet. I do want to bring up one that gets crapped on a ton, but I feel like it kind of needs to get more deserving because of what it was, of what it did, right? And that was a 33-second WrestleMania match with him and Sheamus. He came out with Bryan Danielson at the time, or
Daniel
Daniel Bryan came out with AJ Lee. And he was a heel coming out. They made a big old thing about it and everything else. And it was something, and he was the champion. And I think it was Sheamus's first big belt.
No. His first was he beat John Cena for the title once in a table match.
Okay,
that was his
but it was an
world title.
It was an early belt for him.
Might have been his second.
He goes off, and Daniel Bryan goes to give AJ a kiss in the corner, and as he does, he turns right into a bro kick, and that's it. That was the match. 33 seconds, and if you like watching it the first time, I was like, the hell, right? But one, there will never be a WrestleMania moment like that, ever. There will never be another time at WrestleMania where somebody as skilled as Daniel Bryan gets beat in 33 seconds at WrestleMania. There probably will never be a match that's 33 seconds long at WrestleMania, unless it's got Snoop Dogg in there covering for Shane McMahon. But the brilliance of it, though, goes to Danielson himself, right? The way he sold the kick, the way he sold going into the kick, from knowing like he needed to go and have that moment with AJ Lee, to build the story with him losing with AJ Lee so they could break up, to help propel Sheamus that much farther and everything else. The match and the reasoning for the matches were stupid, like the concept of it. But Bryan Danielson, just looking at the match itself, did so much great service for the company with just a simple 33-second match.
Well, if you think about it too, like that was really the start of the whole yes movement, because he was doing the yes thing there as a heel. Well, as soon as he lost, he got more over than he had ever been before. Like the fans the next night were doing the yes thing, and they were chanting Daniel Bryan during John Cena's interview and on Monday Night Raw, and made John Cena basically reference Daniel Bryan. So, and then from there, like it turned him babyface is what it did.
Yeah, and a pure babyface. Yeah. Even when he was doing heel stuff, he was still babyface-ish. When he was tagging with Kane and Team Hell No, even when they were trying to be, it was great. Like they had that time where they were like going to see about doing heel stuff, but they couldn't. It was too entertaining to have them both as face. And again, Bryan Danielson, or Daniel Bryan, so good, and along with Kane, like. Don't discount Kane's comedy. Like they were so good together in all of that.
I'm the tag team champions. No, I'm the tag team champions.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So good. But yeah, like people don't think about how great that match was for what it did. The match itself was nothing. right? But what it has done, and something we can reference, right? There are so many things that's happened at WrestleManias that we forget, that we will probably never remember unless we go back to do like something like this to talk about. I will always remember that 33-second match because it did the number one thing that you need to do as a worker, and that is get emotion. You need to give the fans some emotional response, and they did that with 33 seconds.
And they felt that, they were robbed of a great match because they knew how they were really looking forward to that match. And the fact that it was 33 seconds, oh my gosh, were they pissed.
Yeah. So there's your first one.
Yeah, that was really good. I want to go back before that though. When Daniel Bryan came to the WWE, and they brought him in on NXT back when it was like a
Nexus.
Yeah, it was before Nexus, because I don't know if you remember that they had the whole like competition style. It was almost like Tough Enough, but through NXT. Like they paired up the so-called rookies with even though Daniel Bryan had been wrestling for like a decade before that or whatever, but they paired them up with what they called pros. And Daniel Bryan's pro was The Miz.
Yes.
And which, talk about long-term storytelling where that went. But they would be yelling at each other. And Michael Cole was fantastic during this on commentary, because he was constantly like berating Daniel Bryan and everything. Daniel Bryan had a match with Chris Jericho on this NXT show. Before it's what it is now, and it was a really great match. Go back and watch that one. That's an one that doesn't get talked about enough, but it was fantastic. And then when Daniel Bryan got eliminated from the show, he cut this promo like the next week, I think it was, where talking about how he was the best person for this job and everything. And Michael Cole and him got into a face-to-face. Like, it was the only time I cared about Michael Cole as a character. Like, but I've come to respect him as a commentator, but just the whole thing, like there was emotion, like it was really good. And then right after that was the Nexus. And Nexus was him and basically the entire group of NXT, contestants at that time. John Cena was wrestling Randy Orton on Monday Night Raw, and after the match or whatever, or maybe it might have caused a disqualification, I forget. But all of those NXT guys surrounded the ring, and they just like jumped on Randy Orton, on John Cena, and did a beatdown. They were tearing up the ring and basically like, taking off the canvas and showing the mats underneath and they were pulling that, which, you never got. I mean, from a fan standpoint, most of them had never seen what's under the canvas.
That was when he choked out Justin Roberts too, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So they're beating up like the commentators. They're attacking the ring announcer, Justin Roberts at the time, and Daniel Bryan takes Justin Roberts' tie and is basically choking him with it and pulling it back. And Justin Roberts sold that fantastically, by the way.
Yes, he did.
Like, so much so that, and this was like shortly after the Chris Benoit murder suicide stuff. And so when this happened, the networks freak out and they basically get Daniel Bryan fired. And he actually got released from the company.
Yep.
During this. So the Nexus storyline had to go on without Daniel Bryan. But the fans, the fans were so behind him and basically like calling for him to get reinstated or rehired. Eventually, it blew over enough where Daniel Bryan ended up being the mystery partner at SummerSlam, I want to say 2010, where he comes out as a mystery partner with John Cena's team. I think Bret Hart was on that team too, which was interesting. And a whole bunch of guys against the Nexus. Well, John Cena's team ends up winning, which there's a lot of controversy with that too, because like people did not, it basically squashed the Nexus idea, basically. Because they lost all their steam. They looked like kind of jobbers there, just getting the John Cena squash. But it was, but Daniel Bryan was a big part of that, and he got brought back, and that was kind of the beginnings there. But it was very, very interesting stuff. The fans were always behind him.
Yeah.
And going past where Sheamus, beat him, some other good stuff that Daniel Bryan did. Obviously, he had some good matches with Chris Jericho, like on the main show, and he had some good matches with CM Punk. They had some really good matches, including, I want to say, like a 2 out of 3 falls match between Punk and Daniel Bryan. I want to say it was like on a Backlash, perhaps, or something. It was one of those B pay-per-views, but which was really good. But Daniel Bryan really picked up steam when he had his match with John Cena at SummerSlam 2013, which they had a fantastic match. Daniel Bryan ends up winning the title, and Triple H was the guest referee during this match. Mm-hmm. So they do the title switch, and Randy Orton, who had won the Money in the Bank briefcase earlier, I believe earlier in the night, I want to say that they did the Money in the Bank. Maybe it was the month before. I want to say it was that same night though. And he comes out and they tease like he's going to cash it in, and then he walks away a little bit until Triple H, who's in the ring, turns Daniel Bryan around, gives him the pedigree, and then Orton cashes in and ends up winning the title, which started the whole authority angle against Daniel Bryan. And after all of that, surprisingly, they weren't going to really push Daniel Bryan the way that he was going to. They put him in the Wyatt family. So they basically kind of turned him heel by having him join the Wyatt family, until they basically, the fans weren't having it, and they switched him back, and Daniel Bryan turned against Bray Wyatt and left the group. And they had a fantastic match, by the way, at Royal Rumble 2014. Mm-hmm. And then everybody thought Daniel Bryan was going to be in the Rumble and win it to go on and to main event WrestleMania. And he wasn't even in the match.
No, yes. They even, sorry, I'm going to steal your thunder on this one. It had caused so much heat when number 30 comes out, and it was not Daniel Bryan.
No.
Instead, it was Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio got booed. And when has Rey Mysterio ever been booed? But he did that night. And not directly because of him, but.
And I believe like Rey Mysterio was returning. Like he was, from injury or whatnot. And so a poor Rey Mysterio probably was like, what the heck? Like, why are they booing me? And they would have booed anybody, by the way, that wasn't Daniel Bryan. The rumor is, and it's pretty much been proven true, Daniel Bryan was not scheduled to go face the champion at at WrestleMania 30. He was scheduled to face Sheamus again.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to literally or actually, yeah, that was this. Hold on a second.
He wasn't scheduled to be in the matches he ended up being at WrestleMania 30.
Right. Because Batista had come back and won he was the one that won the Rumble.
Yep.
And they booed Batista. Batista had just come back from being out for how many years, at that point? Like a few years, like 3-4 years. And they were going to go with Batista versus Randy Orton. That was going to be the match. Now, Triple H was scheduled to face CM Punk. Well, everything got reworked because Punk walked out after that. And part of it was because of the booking. It's like Daniel Bryan wasn't going to get his moment. They were going to book him against Triple H, and all of that happened. Well, they needed to rework, who's Triple H going to wrestle? And they did the story then of Daniel Bryan and Triple H, but with the stipulation being that the winner would go on to make it a triple threat match. But even with that, like, there were still people thinking, oh my gosh, are they going to have Evolution in the main event? Triple H there, and Daniel Bryan was going to get screwed again. I mean, this was Vince running it at the time, so it was, highly plausible that that's what they were going to do. But of course, Daniel Bryan ends up winning in a fantastic match with Triple H, by the way.
Oh yeah.
One of the best openers to WrestleMania of all time.
Yeah, it was a great match. The triple threat was good. It wasn't great, but the triple threat was really good.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think
it had all the emotion there.
Yeah, the emotion was there, but I think the better match was Triple H and Daniel Bryan earlier in the night. I mean, I would put it up there if you're talking WrestleMania openers. You've got Brett and Owen, and then there's Triple H and Daniel Bryan. That's probably the second best match to open a WrestleMania. But the main event was good, but not great, like you said. And it had the right ending though, with Daniel Bryan winning the belt. Part of me thinks though that the crowd would have reacted better if they didn't have the win taken out of their sails by Undertaker losing its streak to Brock Lesnar, like pretty much right before that. So it's like they were still recovering from that going in, because yes, they want, yes, Daniel Bryan wins, so they sent him home happy, but it was if that hadn't happened, they might not have liked this WrestleMania too much.
Right. It would have been probably chalked down as one of the worst, honestly. Not match call.
I think it's one of the better ones now, though, because of how it all played out.
Oh yeah, but going into that too, like mirroring that story, which they did so well, ended up causing another great match at WrestleMania for Daniel Bryan at Kofi Mania, which they mirrored this story for Kofi, all because of essentially a fluke. So it was Elimination Chamber, and Mustafa Ali gets hurt just before that. So they throw in the old reliable Kofi Kingston to take the spot, and he does amazing. But the crowds are so far behind, like so much behind him in it. Like when he loses, they were very upset about it, that he had to end up going from there all the way on to continue to try and strive to like have all these matches to try and get to having a match with Daniel Bryan. They tell such a great story off of having the swerve because of Mustafa Ali's injury. Going into that, it was so good.
Yeah, and he ended up winning the belt. Kofi did, and Daniel Bryan basically returned the favor, for that whole story, and did it. Yeah. Passed it on to somebody else. And that was after Daniel Bryan had returned from his retirement, his first retirement, right, because of concussions and that sort of thing. because he was also having seizures and all that, so he was forced into retirement. Because right after he had won the title at WrestleMania 30, he got put in this program with Kane, which it's like, it's always the success of a championship is really about what challengers are lined up for you.
Mhm.
And it was not the right path. It basically cooled his title reign, and then he ends up getting injured wrestling Kane. I believe it was like a tombstone on a table that didn't break or something, and he ends up getting his neck injured, and with concussion and whatnot. So
He kept it still. He dropped it to Alberto Del Rio, if I remember right. Right?
no, he forfeited the title.
Did he forfeit?
He forfeited it and retired with it.
Hmm.
Go back and watch that. Yeah, he no, you're thinking Alberto Del Rio beat or
Oh
he
no, it was Edge's the
yeah,
match with Edge.
Edges, yes.
Yeah,
Although
it's
Edge
Edge.
beat him and Edge retired with the belt
Yeah,
too at the time.
yeah, that's right.
Yep. But yeah, no, Daniel Bryan retired, and so he forfeited the belt. And then he was gone for a while. But while he was gone, by the way, he did some really good stuff as he was like a host of Talking Smack, which was like this talk show that they would
Yep.
do after SmackDown that aired on the network. And one of the most infamous, scenes from that was when the Miz was on there, and Miz cut this like scathing promo about how he wasn't on the show, and how he was must see television and whatnot, and he wasn't on the show, and he was the Intercontinental Champion, I believe, at the time, and he wanted to make that belt mean something.
Was that it, or was that when he was actual champion? Had what's his name with him?
No, it wasn't during that time. No, he had Maurice managing him at the time, his wife managing him at the time, because Maurice was on the Talking Smack, and Daniel Bryan basically is like, called Miz soft and everything like that, and like if they were going to create a wrestler that was the softest wrestler in the world, like they would come up with the Miz. He's the WWF style, perfect champion or whatever. And Miz got like really fired up on this, and like started calling Daniel Bryan out and saying if he really wanted to wrestle, he would do it. He would go wrestle for Ring of Honor or something like that. And it was great. If you haven't seen that promo, like go back. One of the Miz's best promos ever, because he was speaking truth.
Whenever you see like Miz video of any variety, you see the clip from that promo where he takes the mic, puts his face into the TV, and is like, "This is my show, show."
Yes,
so good.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, and Daniel Bryan,
as McMahon would say, that's some good shit.
Yes. But it was fantastic. Like people were talking about it and buzzing. And I wish the whole Daniel Bryan and Miz storyline had a better payoff. I really do, because like it was basically through Daniel Bryan's whole career, the Miz thing was there. So, or in his whole WWE career. And so I wish they had a bigger payoff. Yes, he came back and they did do some matches and things like that. I think they even did like Brie Bella and Daniel Bryan teamed up to face Miz and Maurice. So they did some things, but it didn't have the heat that moment really should have warranted.
Yeah, they never really had that big payoff that they really should have had.
Yeah.
And it always felt like it was coming. We just never got it.
Yeah. Kind of sad, but the moment was there. It was incredible. And then Daniel Bryan, of course, eventually unretires and gets cleared to wrestle. He kept trying to go to his doctors until one day they said, "You know what? I think you're okay. I think you're safe to wrestle again." and he did. And then he had a decent run. That's when he also, he won the world title again and dropped it to Kofi.
What do you remember what his first match was when he came back?
Yes, it was at WrestleMania, teaming with Shane McMahon, because they were at the time they were doing the co-GM of SmackDown, and they were against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, right?
Yep. But was it co-GM or was it GM and owner? Because I think it was SmackDown had Shane.
You're right.
And
You're right.
Yeah.
Shane McMahon was running the show, but he had his GM, which was Daniel Bryan.
Yeah. Again, and Stephanie. I can't remember who she had, but
yeah, because Stephanie was running Raw, right?
Yeah.
And she had
Kane.
Who?
Kane? No. Corporate Kane? No.
No. No, it was
I could just hear fans yelling at us, telling us we're idiots, that we should remember this.
Yeah, right. Because Daniel Bryan was on SmackDown and Raw.
Is it Mick Foley?
It might have been, actually. That sounds... Or was it Kurt Angle?
Could have been Angle.
Could have been. Because
anyhow.
But yeah, so they teamed up and he hadn't missed a step.
Mm-mm.
Like, he came in and it was amazing. And then he ended up, I remember he ended up having a really good match against Brock Lesnar when he was champion too.
Yeah, it was champion versus champion.
Yeah, Survivor Series.
Or Survivor Series.
Yep. Fantastic match too. Which I was very worried for his safety wrestling Brock.
Right.
He was getting dumped on his head with suplexes and everything. It's like, oh my gosh, please be careful.
Yep.
But it was fantastic. I'm glad they got to do it. Trying to think if there was any other big matches, when he came back. Gosh, I think that's pretty much. Oh, and then of course he was in the triple. One of his last matches in the WWE, he was in the triple threat. Him versus Edge versus Roman Reigns when Roman was on his 3-year plus title reign. Yeah, who would have thought that Roman Reigns would. That was like his first WrestleMania title defense, and he'd go on to have many more.
Didn't he do the double pin the first time on that? Yeah.
Yep, he stacked them on top of each other, Daniel Bryan and Edge, and they were booking him dominant right from that, right from the beginning, really.
Yep.
And that was one of his bigger wins. But it was awesome. And then shortly after that, Daniel Bryan let his contract expire, didn't renew it, and then he's in AEW.
Yep. Which was huge for AEW.
Yes, and that night is still one of my favorite AEW pay-per-views too, and endings to pay-per-view, because they had it was Christian against Kenny Omega in the main event for the AEW title, and Kenny Omega wins, and the Young Bucks come out and everything, and Jack Perry comes out, and they're beating him down and doing this, and then Adam Cole's music hits. So, which, he was making his debut there in AEW, because we were all expecting Bryan Danielson. But then when Adam Cole's music hit, it was like, oh my gosh, okay, so they're doing Adam Cole tonight. They'll save, Bryan Danielson for another night. So he comes out, turns heel, joins the Elite, and then Bryan Danielson's music hits, and the place erupts, and they go to the ring, and it's the baby faces and the heels go at it, and that really seemed like. Gosh, that really seemed like that was like the peak of AEW as far as as far as a story, at least.
Yeah.
Because like that seemed so huge. I remember CM Punk, who had just debuted for AEW, because he had his first match with the company at that same night, which was amazing, having all those debuts at once. He said in a media scrum, not the one where he flipped out, but he said in a media scrum that he compared that night to Bash at the Beach 96 for WCW, where Hogan turned heel and the NWO was formed. Sadly, it did not translate into that, but at the time, like, I'll be damned if I didn't believe that was what that kind of moment would have been, and it and they could have been a true contender there.
Yep.
Yeah, but it was an awesome moment and one of my favorite AEW moments that in their history.
And let's talk a little bit about that too, because Daniel Bryan had some great matches in AEW. But as we're coming towards time, I want to go over just a few of them. I thought some of his best matches, though, were towards the end of this, like this year towards the end. So, like the match he had with Zack Sabre Jr., which they have been trying to do for years, but never really had the opportunity. And I loved it in the way that they told the story, because Zach was trying to do a submission match, essentially, to find out who's the more better technical wrestler. And Daniel finally beats him, but by using a strike, by using a physical attack over a submission to beat him.
They never paid that off, though, right? They never had the rematch, right?
They never got the rematch, which is sad. But I thought that was great storytelling in that whole match. And then him and Ospreay, which was a amazing match. Oh my God, was it so good. And then the way it finishes, I loved the finish of that match, because that did two things. One, it starts making Ospreay more face on that thing, but it also allows you to do something with storytelling, long-term storytelling, that you don't normally get in AEW with the Tiger Driver 97, right? After that match, because he used the Tiger Driver 97 on Daniel Bryan to win, but subsequently seeming like he injured him again. And Ospreay is so like worried about it. He doesn't use it for like months. I think he ends up going all the way to this year's All In with it. So I think it was like 6 to 8 months not using this move, but he keeps teasing it to use it, but he doesn't do it until he finally does in that match. And that's all due to the storytelling with the match he had with Daniel Bryan. Or Bryan Danielson in this case. So good. Such an amazing match too. I was so happy we got to watch that one.
Yeah, and I know you were saying some of his best matches was towards the end of his AEW run, but he had some like early on, like I think he had the was it like an hour-long match with Kenny Omega that went to a time limit draw?
Went to a time limit. That was his first match.
Yeah, so that was fantastic.
Yeah, I think him and MJF also have an hour-long match at some point too. That was really, really good.
Didn't they have an Iron Man? They had an Iron Man match.
I think so.
Yeah, which was fantastic.
Yeah. So some of his best matches were in AEW, ROH as well, but like he really understood who he was when he was in AEW and could do what he wanted to do.
I mean, he just had a fantastic career. Like, and if that was, the last match for a while at least, and it might have been his, this last one might have been his last like big, like high profile match. Who knows?
Yeah.
If they are going to use him going forward, though, first of all, he deserves a break right now. Let him heal up and rest, because I know he's really banged up. And then honestly, if they're going to use him as a part-timer, just have him do like 3 or 4 pay-per-views a year. I would not use him I wouldn't use him on regular TV to have a match. They need to make money off of it by having it be on pay-per-view, and then you do like maybe like a dream match or something with a big story. but just pay-per-view matches. Make him, basically give him a Brock Lesnar schedule, basically.
I agree. But as we're going through this, and now we're coming to the end of this, I want to just say, I've always, like I said before at the beginning of this, Bryan Danielson has always been one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I've always loved his style. I've tried to do my damnedest to mimic his style in the lethal striker submission style, but I always had the opportunity to do so. But he's such a great wrestler, an amazing worker, storyteller. Like, there's never going to be another Bryan Danielson.
And for all intents and purposes, seems like a really good guy too.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what you always hear. Like, I've never heard a bad word spoken about him from anybody.
Yeah. So it's what a hell of a career.
Yep. Before we go, is there any other matches that you can think of that you want to talk about? I mean, there's so many, but is there any ones that come to your mind?
Gosh, I'm trying to think. Trying to think if there's any that I'm missing. I don't believe so. I now know that we're missing some matches. They're just not coming to my mind. But
well, that's okay, because that's what we have fans for, to tell us why we're wrong. And if you want to do so and tell us exactly what matches we're missing, or even just what's your favorite matches of all time of Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, reach out to us on our social medias, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Be Hero Media, or Arrow's course through everything at BeHeroMedia.com. You can also reach out to me directly at Mike Burke DCW on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and Mike Burke Pro on Twitter. And of course, you can hit up Psycho, especially for everything he did wrong, at Psycho Wrestling on Facebook. But since we're talking wrestling, as we always do, let's go ahead and talk about Devotion Championship Wrestling. And actually, you know what? Before that, I want to let you guys know a little secret. I don't get to often go out of state to go work shows. I live with my family, and timing, especially the thing I do with Devotion Championship Wrestling, I don't have that opportunity. But I will this weekend. Arizona Championship Wrestling in Tucson, Arizona, this Saturday, as this drops. So the October 19th, I will be in Tucson doing a show there at the VFW, the VFW 4906. It'll be a great show. There's a lot of great wrestlers there, including some guys from Devotion. So please come out and support us out there if you're in Tucson. I'm from Tucson initially. I love being back out there. I hope to see you guys out there too. That being said, now we'll talk actual Devotion. Coming up for Devotion Championship Wrestling on October 26th, we will be at the Day of the Dead Festival in Ogden, Utah. I believe we're slated to start at 1 on the 26th for that block. I believe there's 2 different blocks, but the 1's the first block. Then following that, we'll be at Light Tree Studios like we usually are at our home, November 2nd for Pains Giving. That should be a great show, and that is going to be taped for YouTube. We should hopefully be started to get all of our live videos going on YouTube and Fight TV, or possibly Thrill TV, starting as of the beginning of the year. So please follow us on YouTube at Devotion Championship Wrestling, or find us on Fight. We'll be on there, both of those. And our new season should hopefully start at the beginning of the year. And after that, we will be in Evanston, Wyoming at the Machine Shop at November 16th. For a great show up in Evanston, Wyoming. It'll be the first time I wrestled in Evanston. I'm super excited. I think it's the first time that they've had wrestling since AWA was out here way back in the day. So it'll be a great time there. But of course, how can we forget December 7th, our 6th-year anniversary show? That is going to be amazing, and that will be the return of our current DCW champion, the legendary ECW Hall of Famer Tommy Dreamer. Get all the information for all of these shows at Devotion Championship Wrestling on Facebook and Instagram, DCW Salt Lake City on Twitter, and Devotion Wrestling on TikTok. All right. Anything else I'm forgetting, Psycho?
Probably, but I can't think of it.
Thanks for the faith, brother. Thanks for the faith.
Uh-huh.
All right, guys. For the rest of Be Hero Media, he has been Psycho. I've been me. And this is us tapping out. Have a great night, guys.